welcome into Double Overtime Emergency Podcast. That's right, folks. We are Sascha? Our first episode of season 2 came out yesterday on Tuesday, and we are recording this as it is approaching midnight Eastern time on
close.
Wednesday, January 25th. But Emergency Podcast, because Western Ultimate League, they dropped their schedule this evening, and it is juicy. There's a lot in here, a lot to unpack. You got conferences now, Northwest Conference and Southwest Conference. Rings a little bit of bell for your club and college regions, but the conferences for the Western Ultimate League. 8 teams, each team playing 8 games. Still mini weekends, even more 4 mini weekends this time. I'm excited. This was great. I thoroughly enjoyed spending my evening picking the schedule apart. How about you, Sascha?
Yeah, it's been pretty fun seeing where everyone's gonna be and what implications each of the games may have at some point in the season, you know. So let's just get right into it.
Yeah, let's start with the conferences, right? Because that's the biggest newest thing, I would say. I think we may have hinted at it, but I think, at least in my mind, it just kind of made sense for travel reasons that you might have conferences, and with 8 teams, easy enough to split it up 4 and 4, and sure enough, Northwest, we have Seattle and Oregon, and we have the Mountain West as part of the Northwest Conference in Utah and Colorado. And then the Southwest Conference is, your teams out of the Southwest region, your San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, and Arizona teams. Sascha, thoughts on the conference balance? Per usual with conference type things, it does seem like one conference may be stronger than the other, at least on paper. Potentially Northwest Conference stronger, but then again, we'll see. Out of the conferences, even before we had the conferences, right? We had teams from now both of the different conferences making it championship weekend, 2 from each last season. So why not have it's actually just going to happen again? Thoughts on the conference split?
I like it for obviously logistical reasons. It's going to be a lot easier for the California teams to travel around to basically just California. Yeah. Like you were saying, one conference does look stronger. Northwest Conference looks stronger than the Southwest Conference preseason.
On paper,
preseason, it looks stronger, which preseason in my head will make it I guess a more interesting we'll get into the final weekend and final weeks, but it makes for a more interesting outcome, I guess, near the end of the season.
Yeah, and we'll see how it plays out. I think just in terms of my first reaction to seeing the conferences actually presented on paper, San Diego seems to just have such a strong roster. It feels like they could just roll through their conference, leaving a fight for the second spot out of the Southwest. But we'll see, TBD. And also, we have an unbalanced schedule, slightly unbalanced schedule, which is to say that not every team in the league is going to play every other team in the league. Because of the way that it's set up, there are 2 basically cross-conference. It's going to take me a bit to not say region or division and say conference. Cross-conference weekends. So week 1 in Arizona and week 7 in Utah are the 2 cross-conference weekends where Seattle and Oregon are basically almost effectively paired up with Arizona and San Diego, and then you have Colorado and Utah basically paired up with LA and San Francisco. And so that means LA and San Francisco don't end up playing Seattle and Oregon. Each team will play each of the other teams in their conference twice. So that's 6 games in conference, and then 2 out of conference games that will happen at the week 1 and week 7 mini tournaments. So slightly unbalanced, but I appreciate that they're like, we're going to make conferences and we're going to emphasize conference record by making you play those teams twice. I don't hate it. I would love a perfectly balanced schedule, but I understand not to emphasize conferences in its first year and for travel costs.
Yeah, it looks like it's, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out, like, I like it, and like you said, I understand with costs and stuff like that. In a perfect world, I would like there to be, like a 11 or 12 week season and have everybody being able to play everybody at least once, and then have the two games with everybody in your conference as well. But not quite there yet. We'll get there, hopefully, one day.
We'll get there. And again, at least in this situation, you're guaranteeing that when you're sending the top 2 teams from each conference to championship weekend, which is what's going to happen, championship weekend set for the beginning of June, location TBD, maybe back in San Diego as it was in 2022, maybe somewhere else, maybe Oregon, where the Northwest Cup was held, or maybe reigning champion Seattle get to host it. We'll see. TBD, still to be announced as of this recording on Wednesday night. So again, appreciate at least conferences. You're going to play everybody within your conference twice, and that should pretty decisively, you would hope, deliver the teams that should be at championship weekend out of their conferences at least. Should we go week by week, roughly, Sascha? Any other overall thoughts on the conferences, on the breakdown? It is a 10-week schedule, so starting second weekend of March and running all the way through again beginning of June for championship weekend.
I like to look at strength of schedule with, like, when I'm watching college football, and doing my own thing of like determining who should be where in what rankings and stuff like that. Strength of schedule plays a huge part in my rankings, at least. And looking at these schedules, Tempest and Onyx arguably have one of the, like, preseason have like the biggest strength of schedule. Like they play all of the same teams, so their strength of schedule is exactly the same. But just because
that's true, I guess. Well, except for each other, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. But just because of, like we were saying, like, one, that their conference is division, conference, whatever it is.
Conference. We'll get this, Sascha.
Conference. We'll do that. Their conference is stronger overall on paper. That adding San Diego to that schedule just makes it that much harder.
Yeah, it's. I think, again, on paper, I think Oregon and Seattle having to play San Diego is a net disadvantage for them in comparison to Utah and Colorado, who do not have to play San Diego. That being said, it may not matter. Sorry, Utah and Colorado. But we'll see. Again, that is why I think the emphasis on the conference schedule, when you're taking teams as the top of their conference, is a good way to do it. It'll be interesting to see at the end of the day what sort of tiebreakers there are. As far as I know, we don't have tiebreakers announced at this point, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was like head-to-head record. If the teams are 1-1 with each other, 1 win, 1 loss in the conference play with each other, then you go to like head-to-head point differential, and then maybe like conference record, in which case then your record, right? Seattle, Oregon's record against San Diego may not matter if it gets to like a tiebreaker situation, depending on what tiebreakers they put into place. But it will be interesting to see. And also, again, on paper, preseason is so fun because we can just be like, ooh, this is interesting on paper, and then you can be completely wrong, and that's okay. So
put us on old takes. Yeah, old takes exposed.
Cold takes exposed. Maybe. Well, and we'll get to our picks at some point when it's not emergency pod mode, when it's not, again, approaching midnight on the East Coast. Okay, Sascha, let's actually just go through week by week the schedule. Let's break it down. Hopefully, by the time this podcast comes out, or around the time this breakdown or something similar to it will be available on Ulti World for you to be able to read as well. So don't worry about taking notes. It should be available. And feel free to take a look at the Western Ultimate League schedule. Look at it for yourselves. Let us know. OT Pod on Twitter. DoubleOvertime@ultiworld.com is our email address. Your thoughts, your picks. We've already seen some picks, Sascha, on Twitter. Again, we will get to ours. Not yet. Not emergency pod mode. So week 1, Sascha. Big games right away. Talk us through it.
Big games. Well, first of all, it's mini weekend in Arizona. What did they call it last year? Siderunners Showdown? Are they calling it that this year?
Yeah, that sounds right.
You think might call it again? Siderunners Showdown Part 2.
Something like that.
But yeah, so we got the teams that will be in Arizona are Arizona, obviously, San Diego, and then Seattle and Portland. And so we have some big matchups already, like starting at the beginning of the season. It's basically, these are the same 4 teams that were in championship weekend last year, right?
Yeah, the exact 4, and notably, at least for what the schedule lays out right now, if the games happen in the order they are currently listed as, it will be a finals rematch between Seattle and San Diego, and then a rematch of the third place game between Oregon and Arizona as the opening 2 games for the 2023 season, which means that the last 2 games of the 22 season are echoed, will be basically repeated in different form, different teams, different place, to start the 2023 season, which I appreciate. I don't know if that was an intentional sort of mirroring, but I appreciate the mirroring of the end of the 22 season to the beginning of the 23 season.
Yeah, and we can see like how each team has changed over the course of this offseason too. And how, like, I guess for me personally, I'm going to try to, if I have some time, go and watch those games again and kind of like go and compare when these ones start, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And like see like how they differ.
Yeah. And I think it'll be interesting too, given that it is just the first weekend of the season. It feels like we were just talking about the, what feels like harder strength of schedule potentially for Seattle and Oregon to have to play San Diego. And it's also the first weekend of the season. So who knows where teams are going to be exactly at, probably still working out some of the kinks in their system, trying to figure out how to play with each other. Although certainly in the case of Seattle and San Diego, and I think this is also true for Oregon and maybe slightly less so for Arizona, but still plenty of returning talent and experience and chemistry. So it may be early season, but we may see teams be able to come out at a pretty high level, especially out in Arizona in March. Also, one more game opening weekend, a matchup between LA and San Francisco, which notably also is a rematch of the week, I think it was 8 last year, barn burner that ended up sending Arizona to championship weekend on point differential. So
can we call that the game
5
to
juicy
go?
Games to start the 23 season, which is very exciting.
Think we should refer to that one as the game to go, I guess.
The game to go that Arizona got and went. Yeah, and Arizona getting to host the opening mini tournament again, notably again in 22. Their only 2 regular season wins came at this mini weekend, but then in 2022, they played Utah and San Francisco. Neither of them had a particularly great season the rest of the way last year. This time they get to play Seattle and Oregon, which may prove a bit of a tougher test for the Sidewinders in their opening weekend. But hey, you get those 2 big games out of the way, and it's going to be conference play from there on out for Arizona and also San Diego.
Yeah, I feel like, Arizona and San Diego definitely have the hardest starts to their season.
Oh, I don't think that's even close.
Yeah. And we could like potentially say that, Sidewinders has one of the hardest strength of schedules as well, because they have to play San Diego twice during the season, as well as the Seattle and Portland squad. So like, good luck, everyone.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, especially since those cross-conference matchups are going to be out of the way early for San Diego and Arizona. From there, we get the debut of Colorado Alpenglow in week 2, facing off against your Utah Wild, Sascha. In Utah, Alpenglow, I wouldn't say it's an easy start, but they are playing the team that finished last in 2022. But Utah brought back most of their players. Colorado probably still going to be getting their feet under them for a bit. So going to be a fun high-altitude battle between those 2 in week 2. And then we just get another mini weekend in mini tournament weekend in week 3. San Diego, all the Southwest teams getting to play. And from there, after week 3, we're already kind of into the season. It is, I think with the mini tournament weekends, it is kind of amazing how quickly the season will feel like it will ramp up, because we will just have had so many games in a short span of time, which you don't get in a more standard, kind of one-off game format when you got all these games packed into the first 3 weeks of the season before things sort of settled down.
Yeah, and also, notably for week 3, it's all Southwest Conference. Like, there's not a single one of the Northwest Conference will be, in play. And yeah, like after week 3, there's already most teams have already played 3 or 4 games. I think it's just 3 or 2. I don't know. It's
I think at that point, every team will have played at least 2 games after 3 weeks.
At least 2. Yeah,
that might not be true. Alpenglow and Wild.
Alpenglow and Wild.
1.
Yep.
Yeah.
But Falcons will have, like, after week 3, they've played 4 games after week 3.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, and right, and then it starts to spread out when we get to later in the season, weeks 4, 5, 6, all intra-conference. Always have to remember intra, within, inter, between, intra-conference games. Weeks 4, 5, 6, and then week 7, another mini tournament. This time Utah, the second cross-conference. This time it's San Francisco, LA, Utah, and Colorado getting to play. It'd be interesting to see at that point, right? We will have a cross-conference mini-tournament weekend week 1, and then it's not until week 7 that we get the other cross-conference weekend. It'll be interesting to see how the teams have sort of settled into their seasons, into their systems, what's on the line, right? In terms of records, in terms of, I presume teams are going to try and obviously win all their games as much as you can, but with so much weight in the conference, it'll be interesting to see how teams approach the cross-conference games. Again, especially once we get to week 7.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much those cross-conference games matter as well.
Yeah, that was sort of my thought of like, they matter, right? And teams want to win them. And if they don't really matter to tiebreakers, then hard to say, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I know that, every team, every person wants to win every single game, obviously. Like who doesn't want that? But we could be getting into situations, even in week 8 or 9 where maybe the game just doesn't matter. It's there for, I don't know, just because they're scheduled and they gotta play,
Yeah, I mean, it's what happens in a fair number, right? Pretty much all like professional leagues at some point. Now they get to the end of the season, and some games just don't really matter at the end of the day. Teams already locked into their spots one way or another, whether that's making championship weekend or not, or what have you. And we have a situation with the Southwest Conference where the 2 final games for the conference are split between 2 different weeks, which is not a new thing. And again, not something that is unique to the Western Ultimate League, but could present a situation where San Diego and let me double check so I don't say the wrong thing. I think it's LA in week 9.
Correct.
Right? They might already be locked into the championship weekend by that point, depending on the result between the Sidewinners and the Falcons in week 8. Which is to say, there's pros and cons, I think, to having offset like finishing games. And we see in other professional leagues that the last games all happen at the same time to prevent sort of teams phoning it in, as it were, because again, they already sort of know where they're at. But then again, offset schedules is how we got that ridiculous LA San Francisco game that put Arizona into the championship weekend. So pros and cons, I think it's notable, especially since the final mini tournament weekend, week 10 in Colorado, Alpenglow get to host a mini tournament weekend, their first season in the league, and it's all the Northwest teams. Could be for all the marbles, especially if the Northwest Conference is as competitive as I think we at least hope it will be, or could be, certainly.
Yeah, I think week 10 is going to create a lot of drama.
Hopefully.
Just because we have, 4 games in all of one conference?
Yeah, like that's 4 games, that's one be conference, exciting. One weekend.
Yeah, that'll be really exciting to, like, in my sports fan heart, I want there to be drama. And so, like, I'm really hoping that all of these teams are staying close and that we get a lot of drama in week 10 to figure out who's going to be going to championship weekend and, who's staying home,
Yeah, and some teams with pretty packed schedules at the end of the season. I mean, we were talking about the Falcons opening up the season with 4 games in 3 weeks. Well, the Wild have 4 games in 2 weeks as it currently stands. On the road at Oregon and at Seattle in week 9, and then on the road, although they're technically home games, but on the road in Colorado. Actually, again, having to play Oregon and Seattle. Oh, if you're Utah, you want to bank your games early. You get your wins where you can in the first half of the season if you're Utah. And on the flip side of the coin, you have an opportunity in those last 2 weeks to potentially take advantage and seize the Northwest. If you can win big, win some key games against Seattle and Oregon, Utah could just propel itself into the championship weekend picture with the last 2 weeks of the season. Like that would be awesome in my book. Again, the sports fan wanting the drama, wanting the excitement. So, Sascha, I'm rooting for Utah to be in position to do cool things and to cause chaos and drama in the last couple weeks of the season.
Man, I hope so.
Any other thoughts on the schedule overall?
It's going to be a good year. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited for the start of the season. When do we start? In March? Yup, March 11th. Game 1.
Yeah. Just like that. And not too long, 6 weeks away, something like that. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be fun. I'll say it here. Might as well. If you're listening through our emergency podcast, you'll get this little bit of news before I maybe share it publicly in other forums. I'm excited because I get to now officially say, yes, Falcons are having home games, and yes, I will be in the commentary booth again. They haven't necessarily officially announced if I'm announcing it. My plan is to be at the Falcons home games, 3 of them this year, so that should be fun. To be able to be in the booth and watch the Falcons play their second season. All around great schedule. Again, I think I love the conferences. I think very smart all around. Would love a perfectly balanced schedule, but we don't quite get that right now. But that's okay. Got some really juicy mini tournament weekends. It's gonna be fun, as you said. Any thoughts before we sign off this late night emergency pod?
I can't wait. That's it. I can't wait. And I can't wait to get more information on schedules and rosters and stuff for the PUL as well.
Yeah, tryouts are starting to happen for the PULs, so that'll be coming down the pipeline. In the meantime, let us know your thoughts about the Western Ultimate League schedule, all the different rosters, your picks. We're going to be making our picks at some point. Probably not till we get a little bit closer to the season. Probably do a bigger full season preview now that we've done an episode on rosters. We've done an episode on the schedule. We'll do one actual one on like, here's what we think. Here are our picks. And we'll go from there. Sascha, we'll see if you can beat me this time around.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. That will do it for us on this emergency podcast of Double Overtime. We hope you enjoyed. Again, let us know your thoughts. Double OT Pod on Twitter. Double Overtime at ultiworld.com is our email address. Feel free to reach out. Season 2 off to a strong start. 2 episodes in the first week of season 2. What was the episode title for the last one, Sascha?
2 Double 2 Overtime.
2 Double 2 Overtime Season 2. Thanks for being with us. We'll catch you sometime soon with, I'm sure, more exciting Western Ultimate League and Premier Ultimate League news. Other than that, thanks for listening, y'all.
Bye.